What?
Oh my
Oh my
God.
God.
bad.
Holy
So
shit.
fucking fucked up. My God. So more than 6 in 10 student loan borrowers say that they're likely to boycott repayments, which are set to resume in October. How did we get here, and should borrowers boycott the resumption of student loan repayments? That's what we'll be discussing today on The Left Wing. I'm Dr. Erica of the Cocktails and Capitalism podcast, and I'm joined by my co-host, John Cooper of Counterpoint Politics, as well as recurring guest, TJ Whitehead of Power is Taken, Not Given, and special guest, Leah, who goes by Socialist Sleuths on Instagram. So an Intelligent.com survey published Wednesday revealed that over 60% of borrowers intended to protest the resumption of student loan repayments by simply refusing to pay. Over 45 million people owe the federal government a total of $1.6 trillion. This eclipses all other consumer debts besides mortgages. And for many, this is bigger than their rent bills. This is bigger than car payments, credit cards, or any other bills that they have. And student loan debts have, over the past 20 years, tripled. I wanted to read this quote. More than 7 in 10 borrowers polled by Intelligent.com said that they will have to take on extra work in order to prepare for the resumption of repayments. Half said they've started a side hustle, while 34% are working longer hours and 20% have gotten an additional job. So this is obviously like a huge, huge burden on Americans who are just getting out of the pandemic, who are struggling to kind of land on their feet. I'm just wondering what your folks' reaction to this is.
I mean, I'll take it one step further and say that it's a huge burden on the American economy as a whole. Most people can't take necessary steps that we have always seen and have been told are like the path to success or retirement or financial security. And a lot of people ran with what we were told and ended up crippled with student debt. And now we can't do any of the next steps. And that includes being participating in the economy regularly, just through capitalism requires consumerism, and you can't really have consumers if you're crippling them with medical debt, mortgages on top of rent, and then now student debt. And it's too much. And I think that our generation, we're sick of it, especially when, like it was said in that survey, in the article about the survey, like, we already paused payments. You're fine. You're staying afloat. You don't need them. Move on. Move to the next thing. Like, it's unnecessary. And I think that it really, really hurts the economy and the progress of younger generation.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, John.
No, go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, so what piggybacking on what Leah said about the pausing of the student loans, when I read about the story and how they're gonna, kickstart this again, I was trying to think about the original student loan moratorium and like how that came about. Mm-hmm. And Trump enacted it during COVID, and then Biden extended it. Biden extended it so because his forgiveness was tied up in court. So looking that over, now I am a simple man. I am but like a humble soldier, and I know little about the workings of the world, but why doesn't Biden just extend it again? I mean, why not? I mean, he already did it once, and there's no reason he can't do it again. And my whole thing with politics is make people say why say what you're doing is bad. Because do you think there's going to be like a big populist upswelling of saying, no, we need to make sure that these student loans are being paid? No one's going to get behind that. Like, even like when Biden tried to do the student loan forgiveness, the 10 grand student loan forgiveness or whatever, like, yeah, people was like, well, I don't think that's fair because they feel slighted. No one is slighted if the student loans are just, paused again. And I don't know why he doesn't do that. It seems like an obvious answer to me. So I just don't know.
TJ, you're hitting the nail on the head there. Like, the obvious political football maneuver is to just keep it paused and dare a Republican president to unpause it. Just dare them to, because as Leah has mentioned, it is an economic doomsday device. It is. We are about to see a catastrophe. Like, if they actually unpause these payments, and again, I'm not necessarily a world-renowned economist, but it doesn't take much to understand that we're sitting on a giant $1.6 trillion bubble that no one has been paying. And yeah, there's a lot of economic recovery going on, but it's going to just stop when everyone is now paying those loans. That money that was being spent on goods and services is now just going to be paid to the banks and to the rich people who own the debt. And that money isn't going to be spent because those rich people are going to save it. Rich people, the top 1% have a savings rate of like 60%, whereas the bottom 90% have a savings rate of like 2%. And so you're going to just right in the Christmas season, going to see a massive decline in spending across the board. And I mean, no one can predict how a bubble bursts or what starts a recession. But if I was trying to start a recession, that's exactly what I would do.
I think that the thing that's also fascinating about it is that Biden's popularity surged when he continued to pause it, when he's done things that help people. Shocking. People like actual help from the government that they pay their taxes to instead of just, bombing people abroad. But when he actually does something politically useful, such as pausing these payments, it helps him. So the question really becomes like, who does it help to not do it? And then it goes back to the history of student loans of when did this start? Whose interests and who benefited from slamming an entire generation of students who are trying to better their education or whatever, even just for no other reason, for like the economic perspective of like, you're a more productive worker if you get educated or whatever. Even from the perspective alone of like culture and things that we all enjoy, it's better to have an educated populace, especially for things like politics, which we all have to engage in. And now we strap all these people with this massive sink that is this debt. And who does that serve? And the question falls back on, well, who are we trying to pay back? And it comes back to people who lobbied for education for being for profit. And I think that that's something that, like, I just want to say, like, I'm really proud of the 6 out of 10, even if they just respond in the survey that they're going to do it. Like, hell yeah, because we have to stop saying that profits come before people and profits come before education, profits come before all of that. We have to say no. And I think that them just refusing to pay back is truly harmless because we've already seen, like, you could pause it. So it's a good thing to boycott. I support it. I think that it sends a strong message. And I think that it really just highlights how broken our system is if we are making the economy suffer for people wanting to get an education. That's just clearly not a good system.
So do you guys think that we should be like trying to push a broad campaign for all student loan borrowers to boycott?
I don't think we're even going to have to, because a lot of people want to boycott it, but a lot of people just can't pay it. They don't have the money. Like it's not an option to pay it. And they're barely getting by now. And now you're telling them you got to pay X hundred amount of dollars every month. I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. And then, like, what's the punishment for not paying it? Oh, my credit score is going to be ruined. I'm not going to buy a house anyway. And so it's like, who the fuck cares? And what infuriates me about it is, like, conservatives, and they have the whole line of like, well, you need to be responsible. You took out a loan, you should pay it back. And listen, personal responsibility is a thing, and I support it. But it's very interesting to me that in the topic of student loan repayment, the personal responsibility only seems to go one way, because on one side of the equation, we have financial institutions with hundreds of years of experience in this field, who have hired armies of lawyers and accountants and like people that know what they're doing very well. And on the other side, we have a 17-year-old who just got their driver's license a year ago. Like
every adult in their life has been telling them their entire lives, you should go to college, it'll pay for itself, including government officials, their teachers, their guidance counselors, whose literal job from the government was to tell them what to do with their lives. And they told them, you should go to college.
Right. So if that child who you irresponsibly gave $100,000 to can't pay you back, it looks like you're the one who's not personally responsible to me. I don't know why it's only blamed on the people who are just trying to better their lives. It doesn't make any sense.
And that's the key point here, TJ, is that these people are bettering their lives. Like I'm just going to get on my stump. And first of all, I'm going to say, if you're listening to this right now and you can pay back your student loans, you probably should. Just like personal financial advice out there. Don't hop on a bank, because it might work out, but it also might absolutely screw you over, and you should be well aware of that if you do. But hopping on like my stump here and just saying, it is all the government's responsibility that education had to be paid for to begin with ever. Because people go like, oh, why should I pay for someone else's education? You already pay for it up to grade 12. And it benefits you greatly. Look around. We have a well-educated workforce. We have the #1 economy in the entire world. You don't think that educating our entire population had a little bit to do with that? You don't think that if people suddenly stopped being able to afford to go to college and couldn't be doctors or teachers or electricians or mechanics or all of these different fields that we need to run our entire economy, if they couldn't do that, where would you be? You know, like this entire economy would collapse at that value that they're receiving from their education. Yes, they're the one who's getting the most value from it, but our entire society collectively gains so much value from them having those degrees. If they make 200% more dollars in income over the course of their lives, we also make 200% more taxes for every single person that does that. And all of the productivity and revenue that they're generating contributes to GOP, contributes to all of these different factors of our economy that benefits every single person who are paying the taxes to send them to college. That's why it should be free in the first place. Because if you want a fucking meritocracy, you shouldn't only be sending the people to college who can afford it. You should be sending the people to college who deserve to be there. And if you determine who deserves to be there by how much money their parents make, that's not a fucking meritocracy. You know, that just isn't. So if you are a conservative who wants America to be a meritocracy, the only way to accomplish that is by giving everyone equal opportunity to go to college. And when everyone has equal opportunity to go to college, they enhance their skills, which enhances their productivity, enhances their income, and enhances the taxes that they pay back into the system that allows other people to go to college. It's very fun. Like I feel like I know I just said a lot of words, but I don't feel like that's too complicated for people to grasp.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at it from just like a conservative nationalistic standpoint too, having a well-educated populace makes us more globally competitive. Like it actually benefits the nation that way.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, like, we are doing, I mean, we're a very rich nation, but in terms of our education, like, we clearly need to be funding more in terms of grade 12, but also after grade 12, because we see the effects of not having as educated of a populace as, let's say, our other OECD counterparts, where we have 71% literacy. In Finland, it's upwards of like 96 or something. In the USSR, it was 98% in 50 years ago.
I'm sorry, did you say we have 71% literacy?
That's right. I was gonna. It's 71.
Yeah, it's 71 or 76.
Shit.
Hold on, I'm looking this up. Continually, I'm looking this up. This is mind blowing.
Maybe I'm wrong. I think it was 76. 71?
79 is what I'm seeing. Wow.
What?
Oh my God.
Oh my bad.
Holy
so
shit.
fucking fucked up. My God.
Oh,
and so it's kind of
all right. Fuck this place, man. God damn it.
And like, obviously, I'm not saying like, you know, my political views are a bit, because obviously this is the left wing, not the communist wing. And so my opinions in terms of education and capitalism do tend to go pretty far left, I would say, as far left as many can go. But I think that that's kind of my thing of like, we clearly need it. We clearly, when you look at, like, we make all these jokes about boomers that can't read memes or whatever, and like they're just like media illiterate where they cannot spot any sort of misinformation. And a part of that is because we haven't invested in our populace as much as other countries have. And the thing that's crazy to me is that when Republicans talk about abortion, right, they have this, I don't know if you guys have seen the signs of like, the cancer cure could have been here 50 years ago, but you aborted that baby.
Oh,
God, it's like,
yeah.
well, the same thing.
Jesus.
If you want to use that logic or that lens of like the potential is there and we're not investing in it, then use that for education. You could have had the best neurosurgeon, but instead they didn't go to medical school because their parents couldn't afford to send them there and they couldn't afford the $200K in debt. You could have had your cancer cure if you had been invested in little Jimmy, who's from Detroit, instead of, I don't know, little Timmy, who's from South Florida. Like, these things are very obvious to me in terms of where we spend our money, and you see them specifically in the South in terms of segregation and in terms of where the public is invested in these institutions. You see the outcomes. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do, I mean, obviously race is very real, but it has to do with the fact that we aren't investing in these communities. That is ultimately the answer. And when it comes to our economy, there is such thing, and they always want to say, go read Econ 101. Well, okay, here's your Econ 101. There are things called externalities. There's positive and there's negative. Investing in your economy and investing in your people is a positive externality. Having a healthy population that can go to the doctor when they need, or that can go seek higher education when they feel mentally prepared for it, leads to a better society that is more successful, that is more efficient, and that is more productive, if that is what you care about. Negative externalities are things that are bad, like pollution. And de-investing in those actually leads to positive outcomes. These are the basics that I just wish that we would talk about, but instead we're sitting here of like, well, I paid my student loan, so you should suffer too. And it's like, are we really using 3-year-old logic right now? Like, just because you suffered, you shouldn't want anyone else to. Like, sorry.
It's funny you bring
that
up,
was my stump.
It's funny you bring up that abortion argument, Leah, because the obvious counter argument to that abortion argument is, well, yeah, they might have cured cancer, but they also might have been Hitler. But that doesn't that counter argument doesn't exist with education. Yeah, they might have cured cancer, but also maybe we didn't get return on investment on the degree. That is the worst possible thing that can happen by giving someone an education. And we know for a goddamn fact that spending money on education has a positive ROI. By not spending the money on education, we are losing future money. And we know this, it is proven, and yet people will still advocate for, oh, well, we should just, have individuals pay that money back, the individuals that need
the 17-year-old
starting families and starting businesses and having achieving growth, social growth and going up a class. Those are the people that need to be paying this, not the wealthy people who gave a 17-year-old a loan. They should not even be able to get rid of it in fucking bankruptcy. It's so insane.
Oh my God, don't even get me started.
This is the system, and we didn't have a choice. We could have not gone to college, but that would have also been bad for us. There wasn't a good choice.
Republicans come back at you. But then the Republicans come back at you and they're like, well, God, the amount of people who come to my comments when I tell them that I was an EMT making $14.50 an hour, and they say, well, you should have gotten an education. You should have been doing something better. I'm like, I am currently getting a master's. I'm going to med school. But first of all, it takes time. And also you need EMTs. And when we say oh, well, you should have just gotten a better education. What about all the jobs that, one, don't need an education, but are still incredibly important for the economy? The person who makes your coffee or whatever, they may not need a bachelor's degree to do it. But one, if they want that bachelor's degree for their own personal development, they should be able to do that. But two, there is no real harm in having an overeducated populace. It just means that you're going to have a flourishment outside of the workforce. People are still going to have to fill those jobs that need to be done, whatever. And those jobs, there are people who genuinely enjoy to do them. But the point of the matter is that, like you said, there's no downside with providing upper education. There just isn't.
Except for all those poor butthurt people that already had to pay their loans back, and they're so upset. Yeah.
By the way,
because they want everyone. What?
I'm sorry, I was saying, point to the downside of the loans being paused for the last 3 years. Where has the downside?
Right. Yeah.
And why wouldn't it just continue?
We literally just raised our military funding.
Yeah.
We just raised our military funding. If you are concerned about the amount of money that we have in the government, stop turning to, again, the 17-year-old who wanted to go to college, and maybe look at Lockheed Martin. Maybe. Yeah. There are bigger fish to fry.
Well, if we had people paying into those student loans, we may have been able to defeat the aliens. So that might be, their
Space
counter
Force
argument
needs
there.
More funding.
Yeah. So